Okay. So I'm sorry about that. So for today, I'm going to be teaching frequency separation still, but I'm going to be teaching frequency separation, and I'll be I'm going even further. Okay. Can everyone see the screen now, please? If you can see the screen, just let me know in the comments if you can see the screen. Yeah, I know you could see Gmail, not Photoshop. So that was why I changed it. So I'm sure you can see Photoshop now. So if you can see Photoshop now, let me know.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, that's good. Today I'm going to be dwelling more on frequency separation. I'll be teaching you how to work with the texture layer, how I get rid of flaws on the skin pertaining to the texture layer. And I'm going to be working with a model with more detailed skin today. So you'll be able to see how I do it and understand it better. So I really hope that we've been studying the videos I've been sending, because it's really important that you study those videos, because you know those videos are like going to help you refresh your memory, and they're going to help you prepare for the next class. And even after these lectures, it's going to help you. But in order to make progress together, so not to make uniform progress, that's progressing at the same time, but progressing simultaneously, I would like everyone to pay attention to everything I ask you to study, to do everything I ask you to do, because it's important. I've been teaching this for a very long time, and I understand, I understand the process and what you should study before the next class, in order for you to understand the next class. So it's important you study everything I'm asking you to study. It's very important. So today we'll be moving forward. If you haven't studied what we did in the last class, everybody has, I believe I mailed it to everyone, so everyone has access to it. So you can go back and study it. So let's move on. So yes, let me hide all of this. Right. So let's proceed. So these were images I was working on before now, but we'll be working on an entirely new image. I'll be doing the same thing I taught you in the first class and the second class. I'm going to be doing it today. Then I'm also going to be teaching you on textures. But I want you to pay attention to what I'm teaching you right now. I need you to pay attention to it, because you may have skipped, or you may have not understood one thing or the other in the first two classes. I'm going to repeat it now. So please pay attention. So you select your images like this, and then you click open. Okay, so I'm sorry, like I had like 2 people join the class now, so I had to let them in. So okay, so I'm going to teach you using this image, this particular one. So let's move on. So this is Camera Raw. If you remember what I told you on the first day, when you shoot in RAW, when you shoot in the RAW format from your camera, you can, from your camera, you can either shoot in 2 formats. You can either shoot in JPEG or RAW. JPEG is a compressed file. RAW is an uncompressed file, which is very easy to manipulate even after shooting. So if you shoot in RAW, it's easier to make certain corrections, and it's more possible to make certain corrections that you wouldn't be able to make if you shoot JPEG, because JPEG is already compressed and RAW is not compressed. So if you shoot RAW and you open your image in Photoshop, it's going to take you to this application called Camera Raw that helps you, carry out raw manipulations in your image. For example, increasing the exposure or reducing the exposure. You understand? So so that's that. I treated that on first, and it's in the tutorial available to you, so I wouldn't want to dwell much on it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm fine with what this image looks like. If I wasn't fine with the exposure, or I wasn't fine with the white balance, I can adjust it here. But I'm fine with what it looks like. I always try to make sure I shoot perfectly. So in most occasions, I rarely ever have to, make adjustments to Camera Raw. So I'm going to click on Open Image, and then it opens, the image in Photoshop. If you remember what I said on the first day, if you take a JPEG image or you shoot an image from your phone and you open it in Photoshop, it opens directly in Photoshop. It doesn't go through Camera Raw. That means it opens here. But if you shoot in RAW, it opens in Camera Raw, and then you can open it from Camera Raw, open it up here if you shoot RAW. So the first thing I'm going to do is work on the most obvious thing I can see, and I think that's the hair by the sides. I know someone in the last class said you'd be interested in knowing how I edit the hair. Now, editing the hair is a very, it could be complex. I mean, there are more complex ways of editing the hair, but I'll just show you the simplest ways I do it, or the simplest way I do it. So what I'm going to do is, remember what I said, before you work, you make sure you duplicate the layer with Command J or Control J if you're using Windows, Command J if you're using a MacBook. So what I'll do is I'm going to duplicate the layer, and then use the clone stamp tool to get rid of the hairs by the edges. I'll use the clone stamp tool. You remember the clone stamp tool from the last classes? You hold Alt, select an area you want to copy from, and then you paste. What it's basically doing is it's copying the background where I have the plus sign, and then pasting it on the area I'm trying to clean up. Let's just find them. Not use the patch tool here. You remember the patch tool from the previous classes? You make a circle and you just select it and copy out here. Then for the hair, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all these 3 hairs here. And I'm going to do that using a tool called Spot Healing Brush Tool. The Spot Healing Brush Tool. Like after working on this here, I'm going to stop for questions because I need to make sure everyone is with me. So, how you use the Spot Healing brush is, I should have mentioned this before I started working, but how you use the Spot Healing brush is you just select Content Aware here. You select the brush, then you click on Content Aware here. Select, remember, I can go over again, select the brush, click on Content Aware. Then you basically just rub the brush over the hair you want to get rid of in a straight line. And the brush, intuitively knows that you want to get rid of that thing you're selecting. Sorry, my system is hanging a little bit. Okay, so let's move on. I'm sorry for that. I mean, someone came into the class and I had to let the person in. So just keep moving on a straight line. You don't have to do this everywhere. You just have to do this on those whitish looking hairs that look out of place. So if you look closely, this is before and this is after, before and after, before and after, before and after. So another thing I like to do is I like to even shape, to give some shape to the hair. So what I'll do is use this tool called Liquify. Go to Filter, Liquify. Then with Liquify, just select the first brush here. And then you just keep pushing. Just like you're using your finger to push in something or to mold something. So that's what you're just going to keep doing with the brush, use it to mold. So I'm just getting rid of the shapelessness in the hair. This is the exact tool you use for adjusting body shapes and all of that in Photoshop. But easy to shape anything. So if you look closer, this is before, and this is after. This is before, and this is after. Okay, I think that's fine with me. So I'm going to be moving on to the skin. I'm going to be using the patch tool. I use the patch tool to get rid of a few flaws on the face. If you remember how I showed you, when I showed you how to use the patch tool. When I showed you how to use the patch tool, remember you make a circle around the faults you want to get rid of, or you make a selection. It may not be a circle, but it's just a selection. Then you drag it to a cleaner area, make a selection. Then you come to the middle and drag it. Make a selection, come to the middle and drag it, make selection. I think that's fine. I'll leave the rest for when I get to work on the texture layer. I'll get rid of all of that. So what I'll do next is I'm going to work on the eyes. So remember how I showed you how to work on the eyes? Zoom in real close. You get this tool called the healing brush tool. Make sure it's just as small as the veins in the eyes. Then you hold Alt to select an area you want to copy from, just like the clone stamp tool. Select, and then you go over. Remember, you don't really need to do this for like a full image. You only get to do this for very close headshots. So the next thing I'll be doing is whitening the eyes. If you studied masking like I asked you to do, then this should be way easy for you. You should understand what I'm doing. So I wouldn't stress it a lot, but just watch. So the next thing I'm going to do is select this tool called, this adjustment layer called, these are called adjustment layers. So I'm going to select this adjustment called hue saturation. This controls the saturation in the image. So what I'm going to do is reduce the saturation. Then select the mask. This is called a mask. Remember, white is for visible, black is for invisible. Then I'm going to invert it to black to make the effect invisible throughout the entire image. Then what I'm going to do is with a white, I'm going to select the brush tool. Then with a white colored brush, I'll paint into the eyeball. When I paint with white into the eyeball, what I'm doing is returning visibility of that effect to the eyes. A few of us are already familiar with masking. So I'll do the same thing to the other eye. Now the eyes look completely dead because nobody's eyes look this white naturally. So what you can do is double click on the box here. So the toggle comes up. The control for the use for the saturation comes up. So you just get back some saturation. Okay, I think it looks natural at this point. So that's fine. So if we use control to select things, it's control or command. So hold command and select things, then I'm going to merge layers. So everything we've done so far is all merged into this one layer. So if I do it before and after, so we can see what we've done so far. This is before and this is after. This is before and this is after. So I'm going to be merging these layers with flattened image. So what I'm going to do next is frequency separation. I'll take us to frequency separation, but before I go to frequency separation, I would open the lines for questions. So any questions, please? If you have any questions, I want you to drop your questions in the chat. I'll give us 2 minutes to do that. If you have any question about what I've just done so far, in a minute, not 2 minutes, 2 minutes is a lot, a minute or less, just drop your comments now before we move on. So I said, if you can hear me, can you drop a comment? If you can hear me, please drop it in the comments so you can hear me. Drop it in the chat so you can hear me so that we can move on. But I want to be sure everyone can hear me. Okay, Alex said yes. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. So let's move on. So good, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so let's move on. So I'm going to teach you frequency separation over again. I taught this yesterday and I touched on it the first day. So this is how you separate. It's in the video I gave you. So let's move on to frequency separation. This is something I taught in the first class and something I also taught in the second class. So I wouldn't dwell much on it, but I'm going to show you how to do the separation process. So watch closely. Command J, select the background layer. Command J 2 times. You rename them. I like to rename, some people rename it high frequency and low frequency, referring to the texture layer as the high frequency and then referring to the color layer as low frequency. But I like to be very literal with it and then limit textures and colors. So I'm going to name these textures. And name these colors. So what I will do next is turn off the texture layer, select the color layer, go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. If you remember what I said, what I taught in the first class and the second class, I said, what Gaussian blur basically does is it deletes the textures from the image or from the layer, whatever layer it's applied on, it deletes the textures from that layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete the textures on this layer till we get to the point where we feel we've taken enough textures. And you don't want to lose colors. What you want to do is take away textures while preserving colors. So I think 13.0 will be fine. 13 is going to be fine. You want to reduce it to the point where you've taken out the textures, where you still have the colors left. So I've taken out enough textures and I can see details in the colors, that's the blemishes on the skin, because we'll be carrying out the smoothing process on the color layer. So I just need to make sure I can see the blemishes on the color layer because that's going to be important. Then I'll click on OK. Then the next thing I'm going to do is select the texture layer. I'm going to turn it on and then select it. Remember that this I sign here is for turning the layers on and off. So I'm going to turn it on and select it. Then come to image, apply image, change this from multiply to subtract. Make sure this is on 100%, this is on 2, and this is on 128. These are fixed numbers, they don't change. This is always going to be on subtract, this is always going to be 100%, this is always going to be 2, and this is always going to be 128. So what you do is change this, and then you select the color layer. This apply image thing that comes up, it's more like a calculator. And what you're basically telling this calculator is subtract the color layer, subtract the details on the color layer from the total image. And you remember what we did? This is a little bit mathematical and it was logical. Remember what we did with the color layer was we deducted the textures from it. We took away the textures from the color layer. So the color layer was the entire image, but what we did was we took that entire image and deleted the textures from it. So now what we're going to do now is we're going to take the full image with this apply image calculator. We're taking the full image and deducting the color layer from it, deducting what is left of the color layers from it. And then what you're going to have left is the textures you deducted from the color layer, because the color layer plus the textures, colors plus textures will give you the full image. So what we're doing here is deleting the full image from colors, and what you have left is textures. So because what we want to have on the texture layer is just textures. So what we're going to do is delete the full image from colors, and what we have is textures. The exact amount of textures that we deducted from the color layer would appear on the texture layer. So we change the blend. It's going to appear gray like this initially. So if you're working and then you see this gray thing, don't be scared. It's going to appear gray at first, which is normal. Then you change from normal. You select the texture layer, change the blending mode from normal. And then you select linear light. Then you select the color layer. And what I like to do is, now what we've done so far, we've succeeded in separating it. We've succeeded in carrying out frequency separation. We've succeeded in separating this image into colors and textures, such that if I take away the texture layer, what you have is colors, and then you can see it's just the colors and the blemishes on the skin you can see. And if I add the texture layer back, what you have is the full image, because this layer plus this layer will give you the full image. If I take away the colors, what we have is just the textures. If I return the colors, we have the full image. So that's that for that. But what we're going to do next is duplicate the color layer, because remember I said it's very important when you're working on the color layer, it's very important to duplicate the color layer. It's very important to duplicate the color layer, because what you want to do is you want to be able to work on the duplicated layer such that if you make so many errors, all you need to do is to delete the duplicated color layer and then reduplicate again and then work again. You don't want to work on the color layer, because then you have no insurance, and if you make so many errors here, you may have to start editing the image all over again. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to Command or Control J to duplicate it. Then I'll select the mixer brush tool. If you're around for yesterday's class, you should be familiar with this, but if you were not around, you have the videos from yesterday's class, so you can work on it. And then you please remember that the settings up here are fixed. The settings here don't change. So if you want to take note of the settings, that would be good. That'd be a good idea. So let's work on the texture layer now. So when working on the texture layer, remember you work on texture layer with the clone stamp tool. Then you right click. You make sure this is set to 40. And you reduce the size to something that approximates. Then you set the size of the brush to be something that's almost the size of the flaws you want to get rid of. So what you do is you select all, you hold Alt, select a clean area. Please note it's very important that you know that you're not trying to get rid of the textures of the skin. What you're trying to do is make it uniform. That's your goal. So I'm just trying to remove the hairs on the skin. Make sure you're selecting from areas of very similar texture patterns and also areas of very similar colors. So the best way to go about it is selecting from areas that are close by. Let me group this. You group by selecting whatever you want to put in a group and then click Command G, and then it puts it in a group. So I just want to have everything I'm working on, my high frequency layer, or sorry, my texture layer, my color layer, my color edit, I don't have everything in the group. So it's more organized. So I selected all of them with Command or Control. In with Windows is Control. So use Command to select everything and then click on Command G. Then it puts everything in the group for you. So this is before, and this is after. This is before, and this is after. Now, if you look closely, you'll notice that I was able to, get rid of the texture, get rid of the flaws, but I still have very intact textures on the skin. The skin is very much well textured, but the flaws are gone. That's the essence of frequency separation, because I worked on the color layer without affecting the textures, and I worked on the texture layer without affecting the colors. That's the idea. Remember, you're constantly going to be using Alt to change your selection points. Alt or the Option key. If you're using if you're using the MacBook, it's going to be the Option key. You're going to constantly keep using it to select new selection points. keep constantly changing where you select from. So make sure you're selecting an area that's spotless. Remember where the plus sign is, that's where you're selecting from. And where the circle is, that's where you're pasting. Plus where you're selecting from, circle where you're pasting. We're still going to return, what would do is reduce this. Remember what I told you yesterday, you can reduce this by 50%. If you feel you've lost too many details on the screen and it's still going to look fine, you select the color copy layer and reduce it by 50%, and you're still going to have something good. Like you're still going to have this. So if you look at the textures of the skin, you notice we still have a well-textured skin, but then again, it's cleaner. It's a cleaner skin, though more textured, though still textured rather. So I'm going to open the lines for questions before we move on to the next thing. So let me get questions, please. I want a question from everyone. So everyone needs to come up with a question. So I'm going to give everyone 3 minutes. So everybody come up with a question for me. Whatever question it is, just drop it. Each person needs to come up with a question. So I'm respecting your question. Thank you. Please, everybody has to come up with a question. Everybody, I need questions from everybody. I need questions from everybody, regardless of what the question is. Please just come up with a question. You have 3 minutes to do that, please. I'm expecting your questions. Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm back. So let me answer the questions in the orders, in general which they were sent. So City asks, are we going to brush the lips in frequency separation? City asks, are we going to brush the lips in frequency separation? So of course you can. That's the answer. The answer is of course you can brush the lips in frequency separation. So what you can do is with the mixer brush tool, you go over the lips and then you make so you go over the lip like this. You can blend the lip out this way. Tomorrow being the last day, I'm going to teach coloring. I'm going to color different images, teach how I do the coloring of my images. I'm going to show you how I apply dodge and burn to my image. Even I'm going to teach you dodge and burn today, but I'll teach you how to smoothen out the lips. So I think this is fine. So I'll teach you how I darken the brows and everything right now. But that's what you do to the lips. Please show us how to make the lips pop and the lips gloss. Glossiness, that's going to be a very difficult one. So what you can do is for the glossiness, you can make the lips glossy on set, and that can makeup artists can make the lips quite glossy for you if you want it glossy. But for the making the colors pop, I'll show you how to make colors really pop in Photoshop. That'll be for tomorrow. Can we clean up the skin totally before doing frequency separation so that we don't have to work on the texture layer? Let me make sure everyone can hear me. Okay, everyone can hear me. So Ajay asks, can we clean up the skin totally during frequency separation? So before doing frequency separation, so we don't have to work on texture layer. You can clean it up quite all right. What the thing is, now there are some flaws. Let me turn this off. There are some flaws as tiny as this that I don't think the patch tool will clean up perfectly. So while I clean the obvious ones before frequency separation, very obvious ones, I try to leave the less obvious ones for frequency separation. But I like to combine both. It's very possible for you to do that, but I think it's very possible for you to clean it up completely before you do frequency separation. That's the texture, the flaws on the textures. But I think it's better if I just clean up the obvious ones with the patch tool and then zoom in for the less obvious ones in frequency separation. I figured that works perfectly for me. I think that works best. But if in the course of working, you find out that works for you, I think fine. But I feel it's easier for me to just work with the most obvious ones before frequency separation, and then the frequency separation work on the less obvious ones by zooming in. I think that works for me. Titi asks, will you be showing us how to make sure of your actions? Thing is, I have actions for most of these things, like the separation process of separating it into different layers, or the frequency separation, the process of separating it. I have an action for that automatically does it for you. I created that action myself, but I can send everyone a link to download an action if that works for you. So you can, automatically just automatically do the separation and all of that. But when teaching, what I try to do is I try to show you how to do it manually. Because if I don't show you, because when I learned this thing, what I learned was how to do it manually. Even though when my day-to-day editing, I don't do it manually, I try to use an action. But if I don't show you how to do it manually, at what point would you learn it? So I try to be very, open, and very, I try to teach everything during my workshops. I try to teach everything. So I'm not concealing knowledge from you. So I can send you links to download an action, which it's not my action anyway, someone else's action, but I can send you links to download them, and then you can work with them. But for me, I don't teach with actions. How can you fix the eyebrows when one is darker than the other or smaller than the other? Well, in the case of being smaller than the other, I think you can use, let me see. So there's this tool. Let me create a merged. Let me turn this off. So there's this tool called the Liquify tool. That's the one I used to shape initially. I think if the eyebrows are, if you have one eyebrow being smaller than the other, what you can do is work with the Liquify tool and then push in, 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 until you get whatever shape you want. You understand that? Work with the Liquify tool to shape. If you have eyebrow is small, or you can work with the Liquify tool to make it bigger, or to give it whatever shape you want to give it. So this is called the Liquify tool. And well, you're going to have a recording of this class anyway, so you can always revisit it. So if you didn't get it, you revisit it and then know what I said there. So you can, for the size, but if one is darker than the other, you can work with the burn tool. There's a tool called the burn tool. I'm going to be teaching you how to use the burn tool right now. Then Alex asks, what's your, I didn't get any question from Frank. Frank, please, can you drop a question? So I know you're with us, please. It's very important I get questions from you. Can I get questions from you, Frank? Franklin, please drop your question, Franklin. So how can you fix, okay, what's your take on plugins, Portraiture and Portraiture 3 and the likes? Okay, the thing was, when I learned photography, I think that was in 2013. My boss, the person I actually, was learning from, even though I didn't learn much there, but then again, the person I was learning from was actually a big fan of portraiture. He was always using portraiture. And the thing is that portraiture doesn't understand the difference between textures and colors. Portraiture doesn't know how to differentiate between your textures and colors in a way that it's able to preserve the textures while smoothing your image. So if you're working with portraiture, you'll notice that most times you're going to be losing the textures in your image. I know if you have a whole lot of wedding pictures to edit, it's fine. You can work with portraiture, but you can be very minimalistic with it. But I don't use portraiture. I've never used portraiture. Never. There's never been a point where I use portraiture because I like to be very, very intentional with my editing. I like to be in control of my editing. Then Samira asks, do you leave the eyebrows how the makeup artist did it, or do you work on it? Well, the makeup artists I tend to work with are very good with the brows. So I try to respect their choices of how they kept the browse. So I don't usually over manipulate the browse. The only thing I do is I probably darken it a little bit more if it's not so visible in the image. If it's not dark enough in the image, I try to darken it or something, but I don't manipulate the shape of the eyebrows or something. I don't. So that's all for the questions. So let me quickly, I'm going to briefly touch on frequencies, dodge and burn. I'm going to briefly touch dodge and burn. And then tomorrow I'll touch, and then I'm going to send you a video on dodge and burn. So you can study that video. Then in the next class, which will be tomorrow, I'll treat dodge and burn. I wouldn't even be doing frequency separation. I'll just go straight to dodge and burn, and then color grading. So I'll teach you how to color your image. That's when I would also be showing you how to apply color to the lips, how to blend the lipstick, how I do all that processes, all that after skin processing. I'll show you how to do that. Then, so let's move on to dodge and burn. So basically, dodge and burn is a process of giving depth to your image. It's you giving depth to your image. It's darkening the shadows. It's giving depth to the structure of the face or the structure of the body or the structure of something. So dodge and burn basically is you darkening the shadows and brightening the highlights. That way, you're going to allow the shape of the face become more pronounced. So this is how you do it. I'll show you how to do it manually. Then if you want to create an action, you can create an action with it. So you select the topmost layer or the top thing at the top here, which is the group. I'll select that, then Shift, Alt, Command. You hold Shift, hold Alt, hold Command at the same time. You hold Shift, hold Alt or Options, and you hold Command. If you're using Windows, that's going to be Control. Then while holding those three buttons, you click on E. Then it's going to create a layer up here. That's like a merge layer. The layer is a merged layer of everything here. Like everything done underneath, merged into one layer, placed on top here. That's what it looks, that's what it's going to be like. Then what you're going to do is you go to Edit. While this layer is selected, let me remind you, while this layer is selected, you go to Edit, Fill. Content has to be 50% gray, 50% gray, 50% gray. Mode has to be normal. Opacity has to be 100%. Then you click on OK. Then it gives you this gray colored layer. Then you change the blending mode of this layer. You make sure this layer is selected. You change the blending mode from normal to overlay. What it gives you a gray transparent layer that you can work on. Then what you do is you duplicate that layer by holding this layer, by clicking on this layer. Make sure the layer is selected. That's why you click on this. Just click once to select, cancel. Click once to select, then press Command or Control J. That duplicates the layer. Then what I'm going to do is double click on this. I'm going to name the first one Dodge. And name the second one Burn. So you type the name and you click Enter. If you want to rename anything, just double click on the name. It will allow you to rename it, any of the layers. It should just double click on the name. It will allow you name. So I'm going to be dodging on the dodge layer. I'm going to be burning on the burn layer. So burning is essentially darkening. Dodging is brightening. Burning is darkening. Dodging is brightening. So you burn on the shadows, you dodge on the highlights. Now I'm going to start with burning. I always like to start with burning instead of dodging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this tool called the burn tool. The burn tool. Then range has to be mid-tones. Exposure 3%. 3%. Range mid-tones. Exposure 3%. Then I'll increase the size of the brush. When you're dodging and burning, please take note of something. You only move over an area once. If you go over that area 2 times, the darkness is like you're doubling the darkness or brightness of that area. For example, if I'm burning, I'm only going to place my burn tool here and go over this area once. I'm not taking my brush off the mouse. I'm not taking my hand off the mouse. I'm just going once. Because the minute I take my hand off and return there, I'm going to be doubling the darkness. Like now, if I go over it again, you see it's now too dark. So you don't do that. Remember Command or Control Z to undo whatever you've done. Command or Control Z to undo whatever you've done. So I've darkened that area. I'm going to darken the cheekbones. I'm going to darken the edges of the nose. This is basically like your contouring and highlighting, but in Photoshop. Remember, I'm going over this area once. I'm not going to take my brush off. I'm going over the area once. So I'm just going to keep my brush on while rubbing on that area, on that spot. I'm not taking my brush off, because when I take my brush off and return it, it's going to double the darkness on that area. Then I may go over the brows again to darken it. Then go over the brows again to darken it. So this is before, this is after, before and after. I think the collarbones are deep enough. What I usually do is I usually reduce the opacity of this to 50%. And when I'm done, I reduce the opacity to 50%. So it doesn't look too dark. Then I'm going to go to the dodge layer. Now for the dodge layer, I'm going to work with the dodge tool. So now I'm going to work on the highlights on the face. So this is a highlight. Remember, it's the same rule. You go over a place once. If you go over that same place the second time, you're going to create a very non-flattering effect. I think the middle of the nose is bright enough, so I wouldn't go over it. Then I'll just reduce the opacity to 40%. Before, after, before. Well, let me put them in a group so I can do that at once. So before, after, before and after. So you see it's giving that depth to the face, more like contouring and highlighting to the face. See, the class on beauty lighting is on Monday, next week Monday. It's also going to be recorded, so those of you that will be unable to meet up with that class will also have access to the videos from that class. So it's going to be a very, very brief one. It's going to be very brief, maybe 10 minutes. It's going to be a 20 or 10-minute class. I'm just going to be explaining to you how I light my images and how I light my images and create results I create. Basically. So that's that for today. Let me see. Do we have any final questions before we move on? Any questions from Dodge and Brown? I'm going to give you a video on Dodge and Brown that explains exactly what I just did. And you're also going to have access to the recording of today's class, so you can go over it again. And and then tomorrow, the first thing I'm going to do is go over Dodge and Burn so that you can understand this better. I'll go over Dodge and Burn and then move on to coloring. But based on what I did on Dodge and Burn today, do you have any questions? Or is there any observation? Is there anything you just observed or something? Just please drop it in the comments so I can see it. Drop it in the chat, please. I'll give 2 minutes for that, and then we'll move on to what I'm going to be giving you after the class, and then move on to tomorrow's class. 2 minutes, any question? I'll keep the lines open for questions, so just forward. So, okay, well, I got only one question. Okay, Alex. Alex said, should we dodge the highlighted part of the hair? And the answer to that is Alex said, should we dodge the highlighted part of the hair? The thing is, yes. I noticed that too, Alex. So the thing is, And I said, do we dodge the highlighted part of the hair? The thing is, I feel the highlighted part of the hair is already too bright. So doing more dodging to it is not going to be it's going to be counterproductive. So you don't need to do that. Then the hairline is not straight in the front. You can okay, these questions are a bit complex. Okay. Then Samira said the dodge and burn technique changes the face totally. No, it doesn't. It depends on the intensity. It doesn't change the face totally. It doesn't. If I do it before and after, it's just giving more depth to the face, making the face look, just giving more depth to the face. It's not changing the face. I am just giving more depth to it. And if you feel it's changing the face, you can still reduce the opacity of it to make it look light. So I think this is okay. So you can just reduce the opacity, make it look light. But you can always control the opacity here. So if you think anything is too much, you can always control the opacity and then make it look better. Then the hair in the middle is not straight at all. Yeah, yes, it's not. But if you want to change the shape of the straightness of that line, you can do that with the liquify tool. You can do that with the liquify tool. If you remember the liquify tool I showed you for adjusting shapes, you can do something like this. You can always work with the liquify tool to adjust that. But these are some of the things I like to perfect on set. That's when I'm working on set, I like to perfect it. And I think it's not, I'm always very against I'm always very much against the idea of leaving things to editing. For example, like that's the middle of the hair. This is something I should have adjusted on set if I had seen it. But I think that day I was so much in a rush and I didn't see it. So it's something I like to have adjusted on set. Then how do we add shine to the dodged part because it looks matte? Let me look at it before and after of everything. Let me see what caused the mattiness. Okay, there's a technique I use to create that kind of glossy, a more contrasted or glossy effect on the image. I think I'll show you that tomorrow. And that's one of the color grading processes where I used to create that that tomorrow. But if you feel like there's a kind of mattiness to the image, then you should consider reducing the opacity of your color layer. When you're done with frequency separation, you should consider reducing the opacity of your color layer. Or just watch out for tomorrow when I show you how to create that glossy or contrasted effects. How do we implant hair? And do we have a brush for it? But that's a technique I learned a very long time ago, and it's just too complex. Just perfect the hair on set. That's what I'll tell you. Perfect the hair on set. There's no need to be implanting hair and all of that. Just perfect the hair on set. That's what's going to work best for you. even though if you want to learn about implanting hair and all of that, you can go on YouTube, and then there are million and one articles on that. But I personally don't do that. I like to perfect such things on set, and then get rid of the hairs that are not supposed to be there. Not adding hair. I don't really add hair. I don't do that. If you want to implant hair, you can get a brush. I'll just say it. I wouldn't say you can get a brush, colored black, create a new layer, get a brush painted black, make the brush as tiny as the hair, and then just draw the hair into the scalp. That's all you can do. Then Samira says the liquify tool is awesome. Yes, it's awesome, but you don't want to be too dependent on it. I mean, even though it's something that most of your clients will be demanding for. Can you make my hips like this? Can you make my head like that? Can you make that? It's something they will demand for, so it's something you need to learn how to use. But then again, I'd advise you don't get too dependent on any tool in Photoshop and try to perfect your shots on set. Which is better you learn to perfect your shots on set. Okay, so that's going to be that for today. Thanks for coming to class. I'll send you a video on Dodge and Burn, and I'll also send you a video on today's class. And please, the videos I'm sending to you, try to download them at once, because the links expire in a week. And I don't want people to come to me after the class and ask for the videos, because I'm sending them to you right away. So please just try to download them from the link at once. It's going to be very relevant. How do you download it? Click on the link. You see a download. You see it's a download sign. Once you click on the link, and just click on the download sign and download them. It's that easy. Open the link, click on the download sign, and you download them. Titi, I said something about the lightning class. I said the lightning class is on Monday. If you've read the email I sent, the initial email I sent, that's the very first email I sent. I wrote it there. The class is from this day. So that, okay, Samira just wrote it there. On the 13th, that's the lightning class on the 13th. So I mentioned that. So please let's study everything I ask you to study, and keep your eyes glued to your emails, because I'm going to be communicating with you through your emails. And Titi, you can send me an email that works. If that your email is not working, just send me another one. I'll be sending you emails through the new email. So, all right, thanks for having you guys in class, and see you tomorrow.